He abandoned me at the altar. I found love again while he's still alone and bitter. Funny how life works out sometimes, isn't it? Like a cosmic karma boomerang that takes its sweet time coming back around. 3 years ago, I was the one sobbing in a $5,000 wedding dress while my fiancé's text message burned through my phone screen like acid. Now? Well, let's just say the universe has a wicked sense of humor. You want to know the whole story? Get comfortable. This one's a wild ride. I remember that morning with painful clarity, waking up with butterflies doing aerial acrobatics in my stomach, my bridesmaids popping champagne at 8 a.m., everyone giggling and taking selfies while the makeup artist transformed me into the perfect bride. My mother crying when she saw me in my dress. The way the morning light hit my engagement ring, sending little rainbow prisms dancing across the hotel room wall. All those fucking signs I ignored. Like how Jason's best man kept checking his phone with this weird, pained expression. How my future mother-in-law couldn't quite meet my eyes when she came to check on me. The way the wedding planner's assistant kept disappearing for suspiciously long periods of time, returning with reddened eyes and forced smiles. I was too wrapped up in my fairy tale to notice the horror story unfolding around me. Half an hour before the ceremony, when I was doing one final lipstick check, my phone buzzed, and there it was. The text that would implode my entire world. I can't do this. I'm so sorry. It's not you, it's me. I need time to think. Please don't hate me. 7 years together, 18 months of engagement, 12 months of planning this wedding, $65,000 spent, 187 guests already seated in the church, all erased by a single text message with the most cliché breakup line in human history. It's not you, it's me. Bullshit. It was absolutely him. My knees gave out. I remember the cool tile floor against my palms, the sound of my maid of honor screaming for everyone to get out, the sensation of my lungs refusing to work properly, like someone had replaced the air with concrete, the mascara-stained tissues piling up around me like sad little casualties of war. Someone had to tell the guests. Someone had to call the vendors. Someone had to decide what to do with all that food, all those flowers, all those carefully planned details. Someone had to deal with the practicalities while I shattered into a million pieces. I wasn't that someone. I couldn't be. The next 3 days exist in my memory as a blur of Xanax, vodka, and darkness. I didn't shower, didn't eat, barely spoke. Just lay in my childhood bedroom staring at the ceiling, wondering how I could have been so stupidly, catastrophically wrong about the person I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. On day 4, the notifications started. Instagram first. A series of tags from people I barely knew. Then the texts from friends who couldn't bear to tell me directly. Finally, my little sister sitting on the edge of my bed, her face a mask of rage and pity. He's in Cabo with Melissa. Melissa, his work friend, who I'd met at the company Christmas party 6 months earlier. The one he said was nothing to worry about when I noticed their late-night texting. The one he swore was just going through a rough time when I questioned why he needed to have lunch with her so often. The one who posted a sunset beach photo with a man's arm clearly visible around her waist, an arm decorated with the watch I'd given Jason for his 30th birthday. They hadn't even bothered to wait a week before flaunting their relationship, using the reservations for our honeymoon, probably fucking in the suite I had spent hours researching and carefully selecting. The humiliation was radioactive. It burned through everything. My self-esteem, my trust, my identity. Who was I, if not the woman who was supposed to become Mrs. Jason Elliott? What was my life supposed to look like now that the future I'd planned had gone up in flames? I scrolled through my phone, looking at messages from wedding guests, the awkward condolences, the forced optimism, the well-meaning but utterly useless platitudes. Everything happens for a reason. When one door closes, another opens. You'll find someone better. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone through a window. I wanted to set something on fire, preferably Jason's expensive collection of vinyl records that I'd helped him curate over the years. Instead, I just drank more vodka and scrolled through 7 years of photos looking for signs. Were there warnings I'd missed? Red flags I'd willfully ignored? Had he looked at her the way he used to look at me? When exactly had I become replaceable? The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was the realization that I hadn't really known him at all. The Jason I loved wouldn't have done this. The Jason I trusted wouldn't have lied to my face for months. The Jason I planned to marry wouldn't have left me standing in a wedding dress while he flew off to paradise with another woman. which meant that Jason had never existed except in my imagination. A week after what my friends had taken to calling the incident, I finally worked up the courage to call him. Not because I wanted him back, that ship had sailed, hit an iceberg, and sunk to the bottom of the ocean, but because I needed answers, closure, some kind of explanation that might help me make sense of the senseless. He didn't pick up. Of course he didn't. 3 hours later, he texted, "I think it's better if we don't talk right now. I need space to figure things out. I'll call when I'm ready." Space? Space? He was literally in another country with another woman. How much more fucking space did he need? That's when the anger finally broke through the grief. White-hot, clarifying anger that burned away the fog of confusion and self-pity. Who the hell did he think he was? What gave him the right to detonate my life and then dictate the terms of our non-relationship? I threw my phone against the wall so hard the screen shattered. It felt good. Really good. So good that I grabbed his framed law school diploma that I'd been meaning to return and smashed that too. Then a crystal vase he'd given me for our 5th anniversary. Then a ceramic sculpture we'd bought together on vacation in Greece. My sister found me sitting amidst the wreckage, laughing and crying at the same time. She didn't say a word, just sat down beside me, picked up a photo of Jason and me at his brother's wedding, and methodically tore it into tiny pieces. "Fuck him," she said eventually. "Fuck him," I agreed, and for the first time in days, I felt something close to peace. The anger sustained me through the next few weeks. I returned to work, mechanically going through the motions of normalcy while internally rehearsing elaborate revenge fantasies. I imagined changing all his online passwords, sending screenshots of his most embarrassing texts to his boss, mailing glitter bombs to his office, showing up at his parents' house, where he'd eventually have to return, and creating a scene worthy of a reality TV show. I didn't do any of those things, but thinking about them kept me going when nothing else could. What I did do was block him on every platform. I returned his belongings to his parents' house when I knew they wouldn't be home. I asked mutual friends not to mention his name in my presence or give him updates about my life. I deleted our playlists, our shared photo albums, our text history. I systematically erased him from my digital existence while he was busy posting beach selfies with his new girlfriend. 2 months after the incident, I moved out of our apartment into a smaller place across town. It cost more and had less space, but it was mine alone. I painted the walls colors Jason would have hated. I bought furniture that prioritized comfort over aesthetic. I adopted a cat from the local shelter, something Jason had always refused to consider because of his allergies, which mysteriously never seemed to bother him around his sister's 3 cats. I was rebuilding, brick by stubborn brick, not thriving, not even close, but surviving. Existing, breathing in and out each day without feeling like my lungs were filled with broken glass. It was progress, however minimal. Then came the wedding invitation. Not to Jason's wedding, thank God. Even he wouldn't be that monstrously insensitive. No, this was for my college roommate's wedding. The carefully calligraphed envelope arrived exactly 4 months after my non-wedding day, addressed to Ms. Emma Mitchell and guest. 2 words that cracked open all the wounds I'd been desperately trying to cauterize. I was supposed to be a Mrs. By now, not a Ms. With a theoretical guest who didn't exist. I was supposed to be sending out my own thank you cards, not receiving invitations that reminded me of everything I'd lost. I called my roommate and declined. I wasn't ready. Couldn't imagine sitting through someone else's perfect day while mine lay in ruins. Couldn't bear the thought of the pitying glances, the careful conversations, the way people would monitor my reaction to every romantic moment. "I understand completely," she said, her voice gentle in that way people had started talking to me, like I might shatter if they used normal tones. "But Emma, you know you can't avoid weddings forever, right? At some point you're going to have to rejoin the world. Watch me," I said, only half joking. "I'm thinking of becoming a hermit. Growing out my leg hair, collecting cats, writing manifestos about the patriarchy." She laughed, but I could hear the concern beneath it. "Just promise me you won't let him take your future too." "He's already taken enough." After we hung up, her words stayed with me. "He's already taken enough." It was true. Jason had taken my trust, my plans, my security. He'd taken my favorite restaurant, where he'd proposed, my favorite vacation spot, where Melissa's Instagram showed they were now regular visitors, even my favorite coffee shop, where he'd apparently started bringing her months before our wedding. How much more was I willing to let him take? That night, I did something I hadn't done since the incident. I looked at Jason's social media. Not his profile, which I was still blocking, but through the accounts of mutual friends who hadn't been discreet enough with their privacy settings. And there he was, looking tanned and happy with his arm around Melissa at some rooftop bar. The caption, "Love these two. Hashtag couple goals." Couple goals? Couple goals? They were built on a foundation of lies and betrayal. What kind of goal was that? I slammed my laptop shut, my hands shaking with rage. Then, slowly, deliberately, I opened it again. I stared at the photo, forcing myself to really look at him, at them. And that's when I noticed something odd. Behind the carefully posed smiles and the strategic lighting, Jason looked different. There was a tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. A forced quality to his smile that didn't match the carefree image he was trying to project. He had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. His face looked almost gaunt. And Melissa's body language was slightly angled away from him, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Maybe I was seeing what I wanted to see. Maybe I was projecting my own unhappiness onto their supposedly perfect relationship. Or maybe, just maybe, paradise wasn't everything they were pretending it was. For the first time since that text message destroyed my world, I felt a flicker of something that wasn't pain or rage or grief. It was curiosity. What was really happening behind those Instagram filters and carefully worded captions? Was Jason truly happy with the choice he'd made, or was he just doubling down to avoid admitting he'd made a catastrophic mistake? I closed the laptop again, but this time without the crushing weight of inadequacy. Instead, I felt the faintest stirring of something I'd thought was gone forever. Hope. Not hope that he'd come back. I was long past wanting that. But hope that someday, maybe someday soon, I would be genuinely okay again. That there might be a future where the thought of Jason didn't immediately stab me in the chest. Where I could hear his name without flinching. Where I could attend a wedding without dissolving into tears in the bathroom. I picked up my phone and texted my roommate. I changed my mind. I'll be at the wedding. No guest, though. Just me. Her response came immediately. That's my girl. And who knows? Maybe you'll meet someone. I laughed out loud at that. The idea of meeting someone new seemed about as likely as sprouting wings and flying to the moon. My heart was a disaster zone, cordoned off with caution tape and enter at your own risk. Signs. Who in their right mind would want to navigate that treacherous territory? But for the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that my story wasn't over. That what had happened with Jason was just one chapter, not the entire book. That maybe, just maybe, there might be better chapters ahead. Little did I know just how much better those chapters would be. Or that Jason would be watching from the sidelines, his perfect new life crumbling while mine was just beginning to bloom from the ashes of what he'd destroyed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because first, there was the small matter of the wedding where I'd planned to simply survive, and ended up meeting the person who would change everything. I spent 3 weeks preparing for that wedding like it was some kind of psychological warfare mission, because in many ways it was. Operation Appear Totally Fine was in full effect. New dress, black obviously because I was still in mourning for my dignity, new haircut, shorter, edgier, a visible declaration of change, and hours of practicing my, yes, I'm doing great, face in the mirror until it almost looked convincing. The night before the wedding, I had a minor breakdown while shaving my legs, suddenly remembering how Jason used to tease me about my Yeti transformation, whenever I went more than 3 days without a razor. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, water running, crying over leg hair. Rock Bottom has sub-basements, apparently. My sister drove me to the venue, giving me a pep talk that sounded suspiciously rehearsed. Remember, shoulders back, head high. You're Emma fucking Mitchell, and you don't need a man to define you. Easy for her to say. She'd been happily single for years by choice, not because her fiancé decided to upgrade to a newer model a month before their wedding. The ceremony was hard. Harder than I'd anticipated. Every vow felt like salt in wounds that had barely started to scab over. In sickness and in health, unless a hotter coworker comes along. For better or worse, but mostly just for better, am I right? All the days of my life, or until someone more convenient appears. I maintained my composure through sheer force of will and strategic bathroom breaks, during which I silent screamed into a hand towel. The reception, however, was where things took an unexpected turn. I was hiding near the dessert table, methodically working my way through a plate of chocolate-covered strawberries while avoiding eye contact with everyone, when a voice beside me said, "They're better dipped in the champagne." I turned to find a tall man in a well-cut suit gesturing toward the strawberry in my hand. He wasn't conventionally handsome in that generic Ken doll way that Jason was. This man had character in his face, laugh lines around his eyes, a slightly crooked nose that suggested it had been broken at least once, and the kind of smile that starts slow but transforms his entire face. "I don't need alcohol to enhance my emotional eating, but thanks," I replied, immediately regretting my defensive tone. But instead of backing away slowly like any sane person would, he laughed. "Fair enough. Mind if I join your strategic corner position? I'm avoiding the dance floor like it's covered in lava." I shrugged, which he correctly interpreted as reluctant permission. He introduced himself as Marcus, the bride's cousin from Seattle. I introduced myself as Emma, the emotionally damaged friend who almost didn't come. Okay, I didn't actually say that last part out loud, but something in my expression must have communicated it anyway. "Let me guess," he said, selecting a strawberry from my plate without asking, which should have annoyed me but somehow didn't. "Recently single and dreading the bouquet toss?" I nearly choked. "Is it that obvious?" "No. Julie told me about you." "Julie has a big mouth," I muttered. "She also said you were funny, smart, and deserved way better than what happened to you." I stared at him, trying to figure out his angle. In my experience, men who approached women at weddings were either looking for convenient hookups or were so desperate for partnership they'd hit on literally anyone with a pulse. Marcus didn't seem to fit either category. "Are you real? Or did Julie hire you to make me feel better?" I asked, only half joking. He laughed again. "Very real. Though I'd be a great rent-a-date. I have excellent table manners and know at least 3 jokes that aren't completely terrible." Against all odds, I found myself smiling. A real smile, not the strained grimace I'd been practicing. "Only 3 jokes? That's not much of a repertoire. Quality over quantity," he countered. "I also make a mean omelet and have never once abandoned anyone at the altar, which apparently sets the bar higher than I realized." I flinched at that, the reminder stinging unexpectedly. "Too soon?" he asked, his expression shifting to genuine concern. "I'm sorry. That was insensitive." "No, it's fine." I lied. "It's been 4 months. I should be over it by now." Marcus shook his head. "There's no timeline for healing from betrayal. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something." "Did you just quote The Princess Bride at me?" "I did." "Is it working?" And just like that, somehow, I was laughing. Actually laughing, for what felt like the first time in months. We spent the next 2 hours in that corner, eventually migrating to a table when my feet started hurting from my revenge heels, 4 inches of pure spite that looked amazing, but were essentially medieval torture devices. We talked about everything except Jason and my non-wedding. Marcus was a landscape architect who specialized in sustainable urban gardens. He'd just finished a major project in Chicago and was taking some time off before his next commitment. He loved old noir films, hated pretentious coffee culture despite being from Seattle, and had a rescue dog named Vonnegut after his favorite author. By the time Julie threw her bouquet, which I dodged like it was radioactive, I'd almost forgotten why I'd been dreading this wedding so intensely. Almost. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I heard you're at Julie's wedding. You look beautiful in that dress." My blood turned to slush in my veins. Jason. It had to be. I'd blocked his number, but he must be using someone else's phone. Which meant he was here, or at least someone who knew him was here, watching me, reporting back. I scanned the room, suddenly feeling exposed, vulnerable. The pleasant bubble that had formed around Marcus and me burst instantly. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked, noticing my sudden pallor. "I have to go," I said, gathering my purse with shaking hands. "Did I say something wrong?" "No, it's not you. It's just, I can't do this. I'm sorry." I fled to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and tried to regulate my breathing the way my therapist had taught me. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. Repeat until the room stops spinning. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, I heard Julie's voice outside the stall. "Emma, are you in there?" "Go away," I managed. "Go enjoy your reception. Not until you tell me what happened. Marcus said you got a text and freaked out." I unlocked the stall door, showing her my phone. "Someone's watching me," reporting back to Jason. Julie read the text, her brow furrowing. Then, to my surprise, she burst out laughing. "What's so funny about my psychological torment?" I demanded. "Emma, this isn't from Jason. It's from my mother. Your... What? Mom changed her number last month, remember? And she's been playing amateur matchmaker all night. She was texting to tell you she approves of you and Marcus talking. She was trying to be encouraging in her weird, boundary-crossing way. I stared at her, processing this information. Not Jason. Not a spy. Just an overeager mother of the bride with poor texting etiquette. The relief was so overwhelming I started laughing too, slightly hysterical laughter that teetered dangerously close to sobbing. God, I'm a mess, I said, dabbing at my eyes with a tissue. I can't even handle a complimentary text without having a meltdown. Julie squeezed my arm. You're not a mess. You're healing. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing it feels pretty messy. Trust me. And for what it's worth, Marcus is still out there waiting to make sure you're okay. I groaned. Great. Nothing says a stable dating prospect like fleeing mid-conversation to have a panic attack in a bathroom stall. If it helps, he seems genuinely concerned, not freaked out. It did help a little. After repairing my makeup and giving myself a stern pep talk in the mirror, I emerged to find Marcus waiting patiently near the bathroom door, holding 2 glasses of water. Thought you might need this? He said, offering me one. No pressure to explain or continue our conversation if you're not up for it. His kindness nearly undid me again. I'm sorry about that, I said after taking a long drink. Turns out I'm still a bit reactive. No apologies needed. We all have our stuff. Some of us have more stuff than others, I said wryly. True, but the stuff makes us interesting. He hesitated, then added, Look, I'm in town for another 3 days. Would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? As friends, he clarified quickly. No pressure, no expectations. I should have said no. I was nowhere near ready for dating, even friendship dating. I was still having nightmares about standing alone in a wedding dress, still finding Jason's socks in the back of drawers and having to sit down for 10 minutes after throwing them away, still unable to listen to our song without feeling like my ribcage was collapsing. Yes, I heard myself say, coffee would be nice. We exchanged numbers, real numbers, not mysterious unknown ones, and made plans for the following afternoon. Coffee with Marcus turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a walk around the city. The walk turned into sitting on a park bench until 2 a.m., talking about everything from childhood pets to existential dread. It was easy in a way that relationships hadn't been easy for a very long time, possibly ever. Because here's the thing I realized sometime during that night, Jason and I had never really been friends. We'd gone from casual dating to serious relationships so quickly that we'd skipped the foundation building phase. I'd been so focused on the fairy tale, the proposal, the wedding, the happily ever after, that I'd failed to notice we didn't actually enjoy many of the same things. Our relationship had been built on habit and convenience more than genuine connection. With Marcus, there was no future to plan, no expectations to meet. We were just 2 people enjoying each other's company in the moment. It was refreshing, healing. When he left town 3 days later, we promised to stay in touch. I expected that to be the end of it, one of those nice while it lasted vacation connections that fades once reality reasserts itself. But Marcus texted the day he got back to Seattle, and the next day, and the day after that. Nothing pressuring or overwhelming, just funny observations about his day, questions about mine, links to articles he thought I'd find interesting. We started video chatting a couple of times a week, which gradually increased to almost daily. Meanwhile, my own life was slowly improving. I got a promotion at work, the silver lining of channeling all my emotional energy into my career for 4 straight months. I started going to a kickboxing class, where I imagined Jason's face on every punching bag. I redecorated my apartment, erasing the last traces of his influence. And then, 2 months after Julie's wedding, I saw them. I was having lunch with a coworker at a new restaurant downtown when they walked in, Jason and Melissa. They didn't notice me at first, focused as they were on what appeared to be an intense conversation. Jason looked terrible, thinner than at the rooftop bar with dark circles under his eyes and a tense set to his shoulders. Melissa looked impatient, checking her phone repeatedly while he talked. My first instinct was to hide. To slide under the table, or make a break for the bathroom, or simply drop to the floor and army crawl toward the exit. But something stopped me. A realization, sudden and powerful. I wasn't afraid anymore. Seeing him didn't make my heart race or my palms sweat. I felt nothing. No, that's not quite right. I felt curious, detached, like I was observing characters in a movie rather than people who had once shattered my world. They sat down at a table across the restaurant. Jason's back was to me, but I could see Melissa's face clearly. She wasn't smiling. In fact, she looked thoroughly annoyed as Jason gestured emphatically about something. I couldn't hear their conversation, but body language speaks volumes. This was not a happy couple. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Just saw a dog that looks exactly like Vonnegut, but with eyebrows. Actual eyebrows. Sending photographic evidence. The image that followed made me laugh out loud, a scruffy terrier mix with what did indeed appear to be distinguished salt and pepper eyebrows. My laugh must have carried because suddenly Melissa was looking in my direction. Our eyes met. Her expression shifted from annoyance to recognition to something like panic. She leaned forward, presumably to tell Jason I was there. I had a choice to make, and approximately 3 seconds to make it. I could A. pretend I hadn't seen them and leave immediately, B. march over there and create a scene, or C. acknowledge them calmly and continue my lunch. 3 months ago, I'd have chosen option A without hesitation. 2 months ago, the temptation of option B would have been nearly irresistible. But today? Today I smiled directly at Melissa, raised my water glass in a small toast, and turned my attention back to my lunch companion. From the corner of my eye, I saw Jason twist around in his seat, his face a picture of shock when he spotted me. I pointedly did not look up again, focusing instead on my salad and my colleague's story about her weekend fishing trip. My phone buzzed again. "Everything okay? You've gone quiet." I smiled and typed back, "Actually, yes. Everything is surprisingly okay. We'll tell you about it tonight." By the time we finished lunch, Jason and Melissa had left. In separate directions, I couldn't help but notice. My coworker, oblivious to the entire silent drama, suggested we split a dessert. I agreed, suddenly ravenous in a way I hadn't been in months. That night, I told Marcus about the encounter. The strangest part, I concluded, is that I actually felt sorry for him. He looked miserable. Karma, Marcus suggested. Maybe. Or maybe Melissa is discovering what I should have seen years ago, that Jason is fundamentally selfish, that he'll always want what he doesn't have, and once he gets it, the shine wears off quickly. Their relationship started with cheating, Marcus pointed out. Not exactly built on trust. True. But I'm realizing something even more important. I don't actually care anymore. Whether they're happy or miserable or somewhere in between, it doesn't affect my life. That's huge, Marcus said softly. That's healing. He was right. It was healing. And the best part? I hadn't even planned it. It had just happened naturally, like a broken bone knitting itself back together cell by cell until one day you realize the pain is gone. That night, I dreamed about my almost wedding for the first time in weeks. But instead of the usual nightmare where I was standing alone at the altar while everyone stared in pity, this time I was walking calmly out of the church, removing my veil and getting into a taxi. Where to? The dream driver asked. Anywhere, Dream Me replied. I'm free. I woke up with tears on my cheeks, but they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of release. I reached for my phone and texted Marcus. Want to hear something crazy? I think I'm finally over him. His response came immediately, despite the time difference. That's not crazy. That's brave. 2 weeks later, Marcus called with news. I've been offered a project in your city. 6 months, maybe longer. My heart did a complicated gymnastics routine in my chest. Are you taking it? I'm considering it. But I wanted to check with you first. Why me? Because I value what we have. I don't want to complicate it if you're not ready. I considered this. Was I ready? The honest answer was, maybe. Maybe not for a full-blown relationship, but for something. For possibilities. For seeing where this unusual, long-distance friendship might lead if proximity was added to the equation. I think, I said slowly, that I'd like you to take the project. Yeah? I could hear the smile in his voice. Yeah. Just don't expect me to help you move furniture. I have a strict no heavy lifting policy with my internet friends. He laughed. Noted. Though I was hoping we'd graduated to real-life friends by now. Getting there, I admitted, slowly but surely. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of possibility. 6 months ago, my world had ended. The future I'd planned had gone up in flames. I'd thought I'd never be whole again, let alone happy. Yet here I was, heart beating steadily, lungs expanding without pain, mind quiet for the first time in ages. Not completely healed, perhaps. There were still scars, still tender spots that needed gentle handling, but healing, becoming stronger in the broken places. And somewhere across the country, a man who had never broken my trust was packing his bags, preparing to bring his dog with the literary name to my city. Not with promises of forever or happily ever after, but with something that felt more valuable, the simple joy of being known, understood, and accepted exactly as I was, scars and all. Meanwhile, across town, Jason was apparently learning that karma has a particularly vicious sense of irony. But that part of the story? That's where things get really interesting. I'd love to tell you I orchestrated an elaborate revenge plot against Jason, something involving public humiliation, financial ruin, or at least a strategic deployment of glitter bombs to his office. But the truth? I didn't have to do a damn thing. The universe handled it for me, and somehow that made it all the sweeter. Marcus moved to town 3 weeks after our conversation. He rented a small house with a yard for Vonnegut, about 15 minutes from my apartment. I helped him unpack, breaking my no heavy lifting policy almost immediately, and introduced him to all my favorite local spots. We fell into an easy rhythm of weekend hikes, weeknight dinners, and long conversations that often stretched until one of us realized it was embarrassingly late. "Are we dating?" I asked him one night, about a month after he'd arrived. We were sitting on his back porch, sharing a bottle of wine while Vonnegut chased fireflies around the yard. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Are we? It feels like we're dating, but without the pressure of dating." "Exactly," he nodded. "It's like we skipped all the awkward parts and went straight to the comfortable middle." I considered this. "I think I like the comfortable middle." "Me too." He hesitated, then added, "But I also wouldn't mind the other parts." "Eventually, when you're ready." I leaned my head against his shoulder, watching Vonnegut's enthusiastic but unsuccessful firefly hunt. "I think I might be getting there." And I was slowly, cautiously, with occasional panic-induced retreats, but definitely moving forward. My therapist called it healthy integration of traumatic experience. I called it finally getting my shit together. Same difference. Life developed a pleasant predictability. Work, kickboxing, dinners with Marcus, weekend adventures, movie nights with my sister. I started a small herb garden on my balcony, inspired by Marcus's landscaping expertise. I learned to make pasta from scratch. I bought new sheets for my bed, not because the old ones held memories of Jason, but simply because I wanted a change. Then came the work conference in Chicago. "It's just 3 days," my boss assured me. "The company's covering everything. All you have to do is represent us at the marketing panel and network a little." I hadn't traveled since the incident, hadn't even considered it. But this was a professional opportunity I couldn't refuse, and Chicago was supposed to be lovely in the fall. "I'll go," I said, surprising myself with my lack of hesitation. Marcus drove me to the airport, Vonnegut riding shotgun between us. "Call me when you land," he said, helping me with my suitcase. "And if you need anything at all, I'm just a flight away." I laughed. "It's a marketing conference, not a mission to Mars." "Still," he insisted. "The offer stands." I kissed him goodbye, our third kiss ever, but who was counting? And headed for security. As I waited in line, I realized something startling. I was excited. Actually genuinely excited for this trip. For the first time in ages, I was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with healing from Jason or building a new life. I was just living. The conference was being held at the Grand Hyatt, a sleek downtown hotel with floor-to-ceiling windows and a rooftop bar that offered spectacular views of the city. My panel wasn't until the second day, so I spent the first afternoon exploring nearby shops and treating myself to deep dish pizza, which I ate while people-watching in Millennium Park. That evening, there was a welcome reception for all conference attendees. I put on a simple black dress, added some statement earrings, and headed down to the hotel ballroom, promising myself I'd stay at least an hour before retreating to my room with room service and pay-per-view. I was at the bar, waiting for my wine, when I heard a familiar laugh. A laugh that used to wake me up on Sunday mornings. A laugh I'd once found endearing, but now made my stomach clench like I'd swallowed ice water. Jason. He was standing about 20 feet away, his back to me, talking to a group of men in suits. Of course he was here. Of course the universe would put us in the same city, the same hotel, the same fucking conference out of all the conferences in all the world. My first impulse was to leave immediately. Grab my wine and make a strategic retreat before he spotted me. But then I remembered our last encounter at the restaurant, how seeing him had affected me so much less than I'd expected. I wasn't the same fragile, devastated woman he'd left standing in a wedding dress. I was stronger now, calmer. I could handle this. So instead of fleeing, I took my wine, found an empty high-top table with a good view of the room, and waited. Sooner or later, he'd turn around. Sooner or later he'd see me, and I was curious how that would play out. I didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, Jason turned to signal the bartender, and his eyes swept across the room, right to where I was standing. The double take he did would have been comical if it weren't so satisfying. His expression cycled rapidly through shock, confusion, and something that looked suspiciously like panic. I raised my glass in the same small toast I'd offered Melissa at the restaurant, then deliberately turned my attention to the woman who had just approached my table, a digital marketing director from Seattle who wanted to discuss tomorrow's panel. From my peripheral vision, I could see Jason excusing himself from his group and making his way toward me. I focused on my conversation, determined not to acknowledge him until absolutely necessary. "Emma?" His voice was exactly as I remembered, which was somehow both jarring and anticlimactic. I turned, arranging my face into an expression of mild surprise. "Jason, what a coincidence." The Seattle woman, sensing tension, tactfully excused herself. "I had no idea you'd be here," he said, shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot. Up close, he looked even worse than he had at the restaurant, tired, strained, with new lines around his mouth that aged him considerably. "Likewise," I replied, taking a deliberate sip of my wine. "How have you been?" It was the most generic question possible, but he reacted as if I'd asked something deeply personal. "I've been... okay, good. Busy with work." An awkward silence stretched between us. "You look great," he finally said. The compliment lacked the power it might once have held. "Thanks. Are you here alone?" And there it was. The real question. Was I still alone? Still damaged? Still missing him? "I'm here for work," I said, deliberately misinterpreting. "Representing my company on the marketing panel tomorrow." "Right, of course." He nodded too quickly. "I just meant, I thought I saw you at Julie's wedding a few months ago." "With someone." So he had been monitoring me through our mutual friends. "Interesting. Marcus," I confirmed. "He's back in town, though. He moved there recently for a project." "Moved?" Jason's eyebrows shot up. "So it's serious?" I considered how to answer. The truth was complicated. Marcus and I were taking things slow, still navigating the transition from friendship to relationship. But Jason didn't deserve the full picture of my emotional landscape. "It's good," I said simply. "Really good." Something flickered across his face. Disappointment? Regret? It was gone too quickly to identify. "I'm glad," he said, not sounding glad at all. "You deserve that." I nearly laughed at the absurdity. Now he cared about what I deserved? Now, after leaving me stranded in a wedding dress with a one-sentence text message? "And how's Melissa?" I asked, because I couldn't resist twisting the knife a little. His expression darkened. "We're taking some space right now." "Space," I repeated, the word tasting like bitter irony on my tongue. "Isn't that what you said you needed from me? Right after you left me at the altar and flew to Cabo with her for our honeymoon?" He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "Emma, You know what? I don't actually need an explanation," I interrupted, surprised by how calm I felt. "Or an apology. Or anything else from you, Jason. I know I hurt you," he persisted. "If I could go back and do things differently, but you can't." I cut him off again. "And honestly, I'm glad." He stared at me, clearly not expecting that response. "I'm glad you can't change what happened," I clarified, "because as painful as it was, it led me here. To a life that's actually right for me, not just convenient or expected." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means we were never really right for each other, Jason. We just looked good on paper. And I was so focused on having the perfect wedding, the perfect life, that I didn't notice all the ways we were wrong together." He looked like I'd struck a nerve. "That's not true." "Isn't it? Be honest. Were you ever really happy with me? Or were you just comfortable? Safe?" His silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought," I said, gathering my purse. "For what it's worth, I hope you figure out what you actually want. Melissa, some other woman, or just the freedom to chase whatever's newest and shiniest. But I have a feeling you'll never be satisfied." I started to walk away, then turned back. "Oh, and Jason? You don't look great. You look miserable. Maybe do something about that?" I left him standing there, mouth slightly open, looking like someone had just rewritten a script he thought he knew by heart. Back in my hotel room, I called Marcus. "You'll never guess who's at this conference," I said when he answered. "Please tell me it's Beyoncé." Slightly less exciting. "Jason." A pause. "Are you okay?" "That's the weird part," I said, kicking off my heels and falling back onto the hotel bed. "I'm completely fine. Better than fine, actually." I just had the conversation I've been rehearsing in my head for months, and it went perfectly. What did you say to him? The truth. That I'm glad things happened the way they did. That we were never really right for each other. That he looks miserable and I don't. Marcus let out a low whistle. Damn. Remind me never to get on your bad side. I laughed. The best part is that I meant every word. It wasn't about hurting him or getting revenge. It was just closure. On my terms. I'm proud of you, Marcus said softly. I'm proud of me too, I replied, realizing it was true. The next morning, I crushed my panel presentation. Spoke articulately, answered questions thoughtfully, made connections that could lead to new business for my company. Jason was in the audience, of course he was, sitting in the back row with an unreadable expression. I didn't acknowledge him. Afterward, I was surrounded by people wanting to exchange cards and continue discussions over coffee. I felt confident, competent, completely in my element. This, I realized, was who I'd been all along beneath the anxiety of wedding planning and the devastation of abandonment. A woman who knew her worth professionally, even when her personal life was in shambles. I was about to head out for lunch with some new connections when the conference coordinator approached me. There's someone asking for you at the registration desk, she said. Says it's important. Assuming it was a follow-up from the panel, I made my way to the lobby and stopped dead in my tracks. Marcus was standing there, Vonnegut on a leash beside him, both looking slightly travel-rumpled but unmistakably real. How did you, I sputtered, too shocked to form a complete sentence. You sounded so triumphant last night, he explained, looking suddenly uncertain. I wanted to celebrate with you, and maybe see Chicago. If that's okay? I threw my arms around him, not caring who was watching. It's more than okay. It's perfect. We spent the afternoon playing tourist, visiting the Bean, taking an architecture boat tour, eating overpriced hot dogs in the park while Vonnegut charmed everyone who passed by. I told Marcus about my panel, about the connections I'd made, about how alive I felt standing at that podium. I think I want to do more public speaking, I admitted as we watched the sunset from the Navy Pier Ferris wheel. Maybe pitch myself for industry conferences. I was always too nervous before, but today felt right. You should, he encouraged. You light up when you talk about your work. It's beautiful to watch. That night, there was a gala dinner for all conference attendees. I'd planned to skip it, but now, with Marcus by my side, I felt invincible. I wore a red dress I'd packed on a whim, bolder and more eye-catching than anything I'd worn since before the incident. Marcus put on the one dress shirt and slacks he'd hastily packed. Ready to make some jaws drop? He asked, offering me his arm. Absolutely. I grinned. We made quite an entrance. Me in red, Marcus looking unfairly handsome in his slightly wrinkled formal wear, both of us radiating the kind of happiness that can't be faked for Instagram. The room was packed, round tables filling the ballroom, each elaborately decorated with centerpieces that probably cost more than my monthly rent. And there, at a table near the front, was Jason, alone, nursing what looked like a whiskey, scanning the crowd with the anxious look of someone who doesn't want to be caught sitting by himself. Our eyes met across the room. I saw the exact moment he registered Marcus, the barely concealed flash of jealousy, the quick assessment, the forced neutrality that followed. I offered a small civil nod, then deliberately turned my attention elsewhere. Throughout dinner, I was aware of Jason watching us. Watching me laugh at Marcus's jokes, watching Marcus's hand rest comfortably on the back of my chair, watching us share dessert with the easy intimacy of people who genuinely enjoy each other's company. I almost felt sorry for him. After dinner, there was dancing. Marcus and I were swaying to some slow song when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Mind if I cut in? Jason asked, his voice strained beneath the forced politeness. Before I could respond, Marcus extended his hand. I don't believe we've met. I'm Marcus. Jason shook his hand with visible reluctance. Jason. Ah, Marcus said, recognition dawning. The altar guy. I nearly choked, trying not to laugh. The casual way Marcus had reduced Jason's existence to the altar guy was perhaps the most elegant revenge I could have imagined. Jason's face flushed. I was hoping to talk to Emma, privately. Actually, I interjected, I'm in the middle of a dance with my date. Maybe another time. It's important, he insisted. More important than this song? I asked lightly. Because I really like this song. Marcus squeezed my hand supportively. I can get us some drinks while you talk, he offered. If that's what you want? I appreciated that he was giving me the choice rather than playing the possessive boyfriend. But the truth was, I didn't need or want another conversation with Jason. Thanks, but I'm good right here, I told Marcus, then turned back to Jason. Whatever it is, it can wait. Or more likely, it doesn't need to be said at all. Emma, please. Jason's voice took on that cajoling tone he used to use when trying to convince me to watch his choice of movie or eat at his preferred restaurant. Just 5 minutes. For what? I asked, genuinely curious now. What could you possibly have to say that would make any difference to either of us at this point? He glanced uncomfortably at Marcus, who took the hint and stepped back slightly, still within earshot, but giving us the illusion of privacy. I made a mistake, Jason said quietly. The biggest mistake of my life. I waited, letting the silence stretch between us. Melissa and I broke up. He continued when I didn't respond. For good this time. It's been over for months, really, but we were trying to make it work because of, well, everything we sacrificed to be together. You mean everything you sacrificed? I corrected. My wedding day. Our relationship. Your integrity. He winced but didn't argue. The point is, I've had a lot of time to think. About what I threw away. About what really matters. Oh God, was he actually doing this? Here? Now? Seeing you again? Seeing how amazing you're doing? How happy you are? He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders like someone preparing to jump off a high dive. It made me realize what I lost. I still love you, Emma. I never stopped. The words hung in the air between us, words that 6 months ago would have shattered me all over again, either with renewed grief or with dangerous hope. But now they just felt sad, pathetic even. No, Jason, you don't, I said, not unkindly. You don't love me. You love the idea of me, the safe option, the woman who would have given you the comfortable, conventional life you thought you wanted until something exciting came along. That's not true, he protested. We had something real. Maybe we did once, I acknowledged. But you destroyed it. And the thing is, I'm grateful, because if you hadn't, I'd never have found this version of myself. Or him. I glanced over at Marcus, who was pretending not to listen while absolutely listening to every word. He's just a rebound, Jason said dismissively. You can't possibly know him well enough to... I know him better after 6 months than I knew you after 7 years. I cut him off, because I'm actually paying attention this time. To what I want, to who he really is, to whether we make sense together beyond just checking the right boxes. Jason's face hardened. So that's it? You're not even willing to consider giving us another chance? I laughed then, genuinely amused by his audacity. Another chance? Jason, you didn't just break up with me. You humiliated me? You betrayed me in the most public, painful way possible. And now you think what? That I should be flattered by your attention? Grateful that you've decided I'm worthy of reconsideration? I know I hurt you, he said, his voice taking on that wounded tone he used whenever he felt attacked. I've apologized for that. Have you, though? Because all I've heard tonight is how sad you are, how much you regret your choices, how much you still supposedly love me. That's not an apology. That's a sales pitch. Marcus returned with drinks, skillfully inserting himself back into the conversation. Everything okay here? Just perfect, I said, accepting my glass with a smile. Jason was just leaving. Emma, please. Jason tried once more. Just think about what I said. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but a distant pity. Goodbye, Jason. I wish you well, but please don't contact me again. I turned away, taking Marcus's hand and leading him back to the dance floor, leaving Jason standing alone at the edge of the crowd. What was that about? Marcus asked as we resumed our dance. The most predictable plot twist ever, I said, rolling my eyes. Boy leaves girl at altar. Boy's new relationship crashes and burns. Boy comes crawling back when girl is finally happy without him. And girl tells boy to take a hike? In the most articulate, devastatingly mature way possible, I confirmed. I think I actually felt sorry for him by the end. Marcus spun me in a gentle twirl. You're kind of incredible, you know that? I'm starting to believe it, I admitted. Later that night, as we walked back to my hotel room hand in hand, I spotted Jason in the lobby bar, alone again, staring into a glass of amber liquid like it held the secrets of the universe. He looked up as we passed, his eyes meeting mine in a silent plea I deliberately ignored. Inside my room, Marcus hesitated by the door. I got my own room, he said. No presumptions. I pulled him closer. What if I want you to presume a little? His smile was slow, warming his entire face. Then I'd say we should discuss exactly how much presumption you're comfortable with. It was the perfect answer, respectful, considerate, but still charged with possibility. So different from Jason's entitled assumptions or manipulative tactics. "I'm comfortable with you staying," I said softly. "With whatever happens or doesn't happen, I just want you here." That night, for the first time since the incident, I let someone hold me through the darkness until morning. We didn't have sex. That felt like a step I wasn't quite ready for. But we talked for hours, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my skin, my head resting on his chest where I could hear the steady rhythm of his heart. I told him things I'd never told anyone, about my parents' difficult marriage, about my fears of ending up alone, about how part of me had always known Jason wasn't right, but I'd ignored the warning signs because I was so determined to have the life I thought I was supposed to want. "What do you want now?" Marcus asked, his voice soft in the darkened room. "This," I said simply. "Not just you, though you're a pretty great part of it. But this feeling, this sense that I'm building a life that's actually mine. That fits me. That isn't about checking boxes or meeting expectations." "I like that answer," he murmured against my hair. "Even the part where I didn't say you were the center of my universe?" I teased. "Especially that part." He laughed. "I don't want to be anyone's universe. Too much pressure. I'd rather be the guy who gets to witness you creating your own amazing life and maybe contribute to it in ways that matter." I lifted my head to look at him, barely visible in the dim light filtering through the hotel curtains. "How are you real?" "Just lucky, I guess," he said, pulling me closer. The next morning, checking out of the hotel, I ran into Jason one last time. He was standing in the lobby, suitcase beside him, looking like he hadn't slept at all. When he saw me, he straightened, clearly preparing for another attempt. I held up my hand before he could speak. "Don't. I just want to say I'm sorry," he said quickly. "Really sorry. Not just because I want you back, but because you deserved better. You always deserved better." It was the first genuine apology he'd offered, and I acknowledged it with a small nod. "Thank you. I did deserve better. And now I have it." As if on cue, Marcus emerged from the elevator with our bags. Jason watched him approach, his expression a complicated mix of jealousy, resignation, and what looked like grudging respect. "Take care of yourself, Jason," I said, meaning it sincerely. "You too, Emma," he replied, his voice thick with regret. Marcus and I left the hotel hand in hand, stepping out into the bright Chicago morning. As we waited for our rideshare to the airport, I realized I was smiling. Not the forced smile I'd practiced in my mirror before Julie's wedding, but a real deep-seated contentment that radiated from somewhere in my chest. "What's that smile about?" Marcus asked, nudging me gently. "Just thinking about how sometimes the best revenge isn't something you plan," I said. "It's just living your life well while they watch from the sidelines." "Is that what this is? Revenge?" I considered the question, watching Jason emerge from the hotel alone, shoulders slumped, heading in the opposite direction. "No," I decided. "It started that way, maybe. But now it's just life. My life. Finally on my terms." Marcus squeezed my hand. "I like being part of that life, if that's okay with you." "More than okay," I assured him as our car pulled up to the curb. "It's exactly where I want to be." As we drove away, I didn't look back. There was no need. The past was exactly where it belonged. Behind me, growing smaller in the distance with every mile forward. And the view ahead looked better than anything I could have imagined when I was standing alone in that wedding dress, thinking my life was over. Turns out it was just beginning. It's been exactly 2 years since the day Jason left me standing in a wedding dress with nothing but a text message and the pitying stares of 187 guests. 2 years, 3 job promotions, 1 published article about marketing strategies, yes, I finally pursued that public speaking thing, 14 kickboxing classes, and approximately 8 million moments of genuine happiness later, I barely recognized the woman who once sobbed on a bathroom floor over him. Marcus and I moved in together 6 months after the Chicago conference. Not into my place or his place, but a new place. A charming 2-bedroom craftsman with a yard big enough for Vonnegut to chase his beloved fireflies, and a sunny breakfast nook where we drink coffee and argue about politics on Sunday mornings. We painted every room together, took turns choosing furniture, and created something that feels like us. Not him, not me, but the strange and wonderful alchemy of 2 people building something intentional. "You know what I just realized?" Marcus said last week as we were planting tomatoes in our newly expanded garden beds. "Today would have been your 2nd anniversary." I paused, dirt under my fingernails, sweat on my forehead, and searched my heart for any lingering pain. Nothing. Not even a twinge. "Huh," I said, genuinely surprised. I completely forgot, and I had. Somewhere between last spring and this one, I'd stopped counting the months since the incident, stopped measuring my life in before and after, stopped defining myself as the woman who was left at the altar. I'd just been living. Want to do something to commemorate? Marcus asked. Like, I don't know, burn an effigy or something? I laughed, throwing a clump of soil at him that he dodged with practiced ease. I think I'd rather just plant tomatoes with you. That's disappointingly mature of you, he teased. I know, right? Who even am I anymore? The thing is, I know exactly who I am now. I'm the woman who rebuilt herself from the ground up, who discovered that her foundation was much stronger than she realized, who learned that sometimes the things we think will destroy us actually force us to find parts of ourselves we never knew existed. I still see Jason occasionally. Our city isn't that big, and we still have some overlapping social circles despite my best efforts to prune them. Julie's baby shower last month, the opening of a new restaurant downtown where he was dining with co-workers, the charity 5K I ran with my sister in the fall. Each time the encounter gets less dramatic. A nod, a brief awkward "how are you?" Small talk about the weather or the event we're both attending. The kind of polite, distant interactions you have with someone who was once important, but now occupies roughly the same emotional space as your former dentist. I've heard things about him, of course. People love to report back, despite my insistence that I'm not interested. Melissa is long gone, apparently left him for her CrossFit instructor 6 months after Chicago. There was a string of short-term relationships after that, a career setback when he lost a major client. A brief stint in therapy, according to my former maid of honor, who still talks to his sister. Most recently, a seemingly desperate return to online dating, where he's reportedly updated his profile weekly with increasingly plaintive descriptions of what he's looking for. I wish I could say I don't feel any satisfaction in his struggles. That would be the magnanimous thing, the bigger person thing, but I'd be lying. There's still a small, petty part of me that thinks, good, let him flounder a bit. Let him understand what it feels like to be unmoored, uncertain, rearranging your entire concept of your future in real time. The difference is that petty part no longer drives my decisions. It's just an occasional passenger that I acknowledge and then politely ask to sit in the back seat while my better self takes the wheel. Last weekend we celebrated Marcus's birthday with a small gathering in our backyard. String lights in the trees, a fire pit crackling in the center of our mismatched outdoor furniture, friends laughing and passing plates of food, while Vonnegut worked the crowd for scraps with shameless determination. You seem happy? My sister said, handing me a fresh glass of wine as we watched Marcus demonstrate his spectacularly bad salsa, dancing to our amused guests. I am, I said simply. Like genuinely happy? She clarified. Not the fake it till you make it happy you were trying to pull off after the incident. It's not what I planned, I admitted, but it's better. She clinked her glass against mine. To better than planned. To better than planned, I echoed. Later that night, after everyone had gone and we were cleaning up the aftermath of the party, Marcus pulled me into a slow dance in the middle of our kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and half-empty wine bottles. What's this for? I asked, resting my head against his shoulder. No reason, he said. Just felt like holding you. Even though I smell like barbecue smoke and probably have guacamole in my hair? Especially because of that. He laughed. It's a very specific kind of sexy. We swayed to no music for a while, just the sound of the neighbors' wind chimes and distant traffic, and Vonnegut snoring on his bed in the corner. Hey, he said after a while, his voice taking on that tone he gets when he's about to say something important. I've been thinking about something. Would it be weird if I asked you to marry me someday? Not now, not tomorrow, but eventually? I leaned back to look at his face, searching for any sign of doubt or pressure or expectation. There was none, just the same steady warmth I'd come to rely on. Not weird, I said carefully. But are you sure? After everything? He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I'm not Jason, he said simply. And you're not the same Emma. We'd do it our way. Plus, he added with a grin, I promise not to text you if I change my mind. Too soon. I groaned, but I was laughing. Is that a maybe? It's a let's keep talking about it, I offered. A strong maybe trending toward probable yes if you play your cards right. He kissed me then, tasting like chocolate cake and possibility. I can work with that. 3 days later, I was grabbing coffee before work when I literally bumped into Jason coming out of the cafe, causing him to spill his drink all over his pristine white shirt. "Shit! I'm so sorry," I exclaimed automatically, grabbing napkins from a nearby dispenser and handing them to him. "It's fine, it's Emma?" I looked up, registering who I'd collided with, and felt nothing. No quickened pulse. No anxiety. Not even that petty satisfaction I'd occasionally indulged in. Just the mild embarrassment of having made a stranger spill their coffee. Except he wasn't a stranger. He was the man I'd once planned to spend my life with. The man whose abandonment had nearly destroyed me. The man whose name had once been a knife in my heart. And now he was just a guy with coffee on his shirt. "Jason," I acknowledged. "Sorry about that. I wasn't looking where I was going." "It's no problem," he said, dabbing ineffectually at the spreading stain. "How are you? You look happy," he finished, a flicker of something, regret, resignation, crossing his face. "I am," I confirmed, not unkindly. An awkward silence stretched between us. 2 years ago, this encounter would have been fraught with tension, loaded with subtext, possibly ending in tears or recriminations or desperate declarations. Now, it was just uncomfortable in the mundane way that running into distant acquaintances often is. "I heard you're living with someone," he said finally. "The guy from the conference." "Marcus," I supplied. "Yes, for about a year and a half now." "That's great," he said with what seemed like genuine effort at sincerity. "You deserve that." Once those words from him would have meant everything. Now they were just words, nice enough but carrying no special weight. "Thanks," I said. "How about you? Are you doing okay?" He shrugged, a gesture so familiar it gave me a strange sense of déjà vu. "Working a lot, trying to figure some things out." "Well, good luck with that," I said, meaning it. "And sorry again about the coffee." "Don't worry about it," he hesitated, then added, "It was good to see you, Emma." "You too, Jason." And the bizarre thing was, I meant it. Not because I harbored any lingering feelings, or because I'd achieved some saint-like state of forgiveness, but because seeing him, really seeing him as he was now and not as the villain in my story, helped me realize how completely I'd moved on. He was just a person who had made some bad choices. A person who was clearly still grappling with those choices. A person who had once been central to my world, but now existed on the periphery, like a character from a book I'd read long ago, whose name I could recall, but whose story had faded in the details. I walked out of the coffee shop and texted Marcus. "Just ran into Jason." Literally. Made him spill coffee all over himself, which feels like poetic justice. His response came immediately. "Did you take a victory photo?" "Please tell me you took a victory photo." "No photos," I replied. But you know what's weird? I feel kind of sorry for him. That is weird. But also healthy. Probably. I think I'm officially completely over it. Over him. Like, for real this time. This calls for celebration. Fancy dinner tonight or take out on the couch with bad reality TV? Is there even a question? Take out and trash TV all the way. That night, curled on the couch with Marcus and Vonnegut, surrounded by empty cartons of Thai food, watching strangers make terrible relationship decisions on television, I had a moment of perfect clarity. This comfortable, imperfect, authentic life was what I'd always wanted, even when I was too busy planning the perfect wedding to realize it. Not the external trappings of success or the socially approved timeline, but the bone-deep certainty that I was exactly where I belonged. He abandoned me at the altar. I found love again while he's still alone and bitter. But that's not the end of the story. Not even close. Because the real story wasn't about him, or even about Marcus. It was about me. About the woman who rose from the ashes of public humiliation and built something beautiful from the ruins. Who discovered that sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best chapter of your story. If I could go back in time to that hotel room, to that devastated bride in her $5,000 dress with mascara streaking down her cheeks, I'd tell her, it's going to hurt like hell. For a long time. Longer than you think you can bear. But one day you'll wake up and realize the pain has faded. One day you'll go entire weeks without thinking about him. One day, you'll accidentally bump into him at a coffee shop and feel nothing but a mild sympathy for someone who lost the best thing he ever had. One day, you'll look around at the life you've built, a life you never could have imagined when you were planning that wedding, and you'll think, thank God he left. Thank God for that text message that felt like the end of the world, but was actually the beginning of a much better story. And the strangest, most wonderful part? You'll mean it with your whole heart.